Hey there, I'm author Shannon Reber, and this is the Lit Chicks podcast. And today it's just me and Mary Ellen, author
Yes, and publisher of Linksfield Publishing.
Mary Ellen Humphrey, author Shannon Reber,
Oh, sorry.
and no worries. But yeah, you've got all the stuff and the things, and we are what, the Innovation Studios, right?
We
That's
are at
what
the
it's called.
Yes, we're at the Lakeshore Center for the Arts Innovation Studio. They
Okay.
are nicely letting us use their equipment, which we really appreciate, especially me, since I'm not technology advanced here.
Well, I mean, sometimes there are some things that all of us are good at, and there are other things that we're not. So
Yeah,
we all
well,
did something.
there was a time in my life when I was at the top of the, I bought the first IBM PC in 1981.
Nice.
I got the tabletop PC with a single-sided floppy, 64K,
Oh my
and
goodness.
a dot matrix printer. The whole thing was $5,200.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I soon added a second floppy disk, and then I was able to get a double-sided floppy disk.
Oh my
Everything
goodness.
was done in DOS. So see, I do know something, but
You
it's
did.
just not.
You did. I like it.
Yeah, I was ahead of the game. That was back in my 30s. So. Now forget it. I hardly know what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, today we were going to talk about oh shoot, I've already forgotten.
Jeannie Auel.
Thank you.
Jeannie Auel, who wrote the Earth Children series way back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I like to do is to see what other authors do.
Right.
How do they write? What's their process? And I got to say that in all the years I've been doing this, which is maybe 30 or more,
yeah,
every single author seems to have their own way to do things.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some general principles, but you're kind of on your own.
Right.
Exactly. So I related with Jeannie because she was out of work and she'd sat down, she got this inspiration. What if I write a story about ancient people and how things evolved and all this kind of stuff?
Okay.
And she sat down and she started writing, and then she started researching. Okay. And she spent months and months just totally obsessed with the story, and she ended up with 500,000 words.
Okay.
And she looked at it and she said, it's not a story. I don't know what it is. And I so related to that because my first book I wrote, I sat down and I wrote, 200 pages, not as much as her. But I got done and I said, oh, this doesn't look like a book. How do I do this? And so her process was similar, although she was certainly much smarter than I am. And she had this 500,000 words that ended up being, I think, about 1 million words that became 6 books in a series.
That's amazing.
And she started going to writers' conferences and really started trying to figure out, like we do,
right?
How do other authors do this?
Right.
How do they do this? And she was inspired and being a very smart lady, because she used to, way back in the 80s, early 80s, she was programming circuit boards.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, I think she might have been a lawyer too. She was really very technical oriented.
That's cool.
So that really helped her with the structure of her book as she was working on it. So she said something. I found an article where she was interviewed in 1984, and I went back because I had read this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it inspired me. So I went back and pulled it out, and I got a couple of quotes from her that I thought would be really helpful to us as writers.
Yeah.
So she said there are 2 kinds of writers in the world: the organized ones and the organic ones.
Organic,
yeah. I'm kind of a hybrid.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
In a good sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The ET sense. And so
you can be ET. That's okay.
I could be. Anyway, she said, when you're organized, you do an outline. So we know what that is.
Yeah.
You sit down and you outline it. And there's different ways of doing that.
Right.
You do character studies, you do all of this and all of that before you write.
Right.
But what I do and what she does is the other approach is the organic one. You know where you're going and you kind of just let it take you there.
Yeah.
The outline for all her books was her first draft, those 500,000 words. Yeah. And I was happy to read that because that's kind of my process.
Yeah.
When you get done with that, you go into the rewriting process.
Exactly.
And in that process, you take what you've written and you do more of that refining, which you might have done in an outline.
Right.
So she says, it turns out I don't mind rewriting. Well, I have a hard time with rewriting. I like my first draft, all that inspiration and fun, and then I have to go back and re-envision it,
it does take
rewrite
out
it.
some of the fun.
But I'm working on trying to enjoy that.
Yes.
She said, I like it. I love that first flush, that first draft when things are happening, right?
Yeah.
She said, that's the hardest part to do. And,
right.
And for a lot of people, that is.
Yeah, it's true.
I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who will write a first chapter to a book and then can't go any further.
Exactly.
And they have wonderful first chapters.
Yeah.
But where's the story? So that is a hard part. But she said, I also like rewriting because that's where I get to handle. That's where I'm fine tuning. And she fine tuned the first page of Clan of the Cave Bear 40 times.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that made me feel pretty inadequate because I think if I do 4 times, I've done a lot. But anyway, I thought that she was really, really inspiring. And as you know, back in the 80s, there were still a lot of people going to traditional publishers.
Right.
And her first book was auctioned.
Okay.
And so she had tried to do it herself. She had tried to go to publishing houses and had been rejected several times.
Okay, yeah.
So finally she went to an agent.
Okay.
And she got an agent who really loved the story and decided to auction it as a first book.
And okay, now what does that mean to auction the book? Like
they kind of put it out there to all different publishers and say, here's a really good book. I'm an agent. I represent this person. I've read this. It's going to be a series and it's going to be a bestseller. And so with that recognition, publishing houses bid on it. And her first book, her first check was $130,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and then
that is so
and
cool.
then she made millions after that. But,
of course, yeah.
But it was, and I loved her books, by the way. I remember reading them, and I was like, whoa! I like Ayler, I think her name was, little kind of a light-skinned girl who was adopted by the Neanderthals or something, and all this stuff. It was just a really, really interesting way she wrote.
Yeah,
now,
it really is.
How about you? You said you had a favorite author.
Well, I do. I don't actually have a favorite author because I'm a mood reader. So it's whatever I'm in the mood for. But this one author, I read her first book just kind of randomly. And it was totally amazing. And I absolutely fell in love. And it was 3 different trilogies that it brought all the characters together. So it was such a great series. And this woman is Rachel Morgan. So the only thing that I ever realized about her writing was like she called the front yard the garden. So I went, oh, okay, so I don't think she's American because Americans don't do that. But I had no clue, the narrators were all totally what do you call that? Non-accented American. So it was fun and like everything that she writes, I love it. Well, I did a little bit of research and discovered that this woman went to school to become a geneticist.
Oh, no kidding.
A geneticist.
So scientists, lawyers, all these people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like she went to school to become a geneticist and she decided that she didn't like the idea of a grown-up job. And she became a writer. And that made me love her even more.
Great.
I thought it was so cool. But like you were saying, she was a lawyer,
a technician of some sort, highly educated. Yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah,
and she had something that some of us don't have. She had a very supportive husband.
Oh.
And they had 4 children, and some of them were in college, and she was out of work. Wow. And she had the opportunity to go back to work with a really good job. She wanted this. She was so in the middle of this obsession. And her husband said, go ahead, pursue your dream.
I love that.
Yeah. That gives me chills because, I really haven't personally felt that kind of support. I'll tell you one funny story, though. When I was first writing, I went to conferences and there was this one speaker, I don't remember his name, but a young lady raised her hand at the end to ask some questions. And she said, well, what do you do if you don't have a supportive mate? And you want to, your spouse doesn't support your dream.
Yeah.
He said, get a divorce. I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, did he really say that? Because she asked the question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is absolutely amazing.
Then he went on to say, why would you be married to someone who doesn't support your dream?
That is an excellent question. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there, here I am.
Yeah, hey, and you did, and you're happy now.
Yeah,
So
I'm my support now. But anyway,
oh, me too. I'm
yeah,
with you. I'm
yeah. Well, that's part of the journey, I guess. And I do think in a certain way, writing is kind of returning to childhood
it's
because
true.
I know as you watch children, they're making up stories all the
Oh,
time.
heck
You know,
yeah.
they got the little car driving into the garage, coming home from work, doing this, doing that. It's all make believe.
Mhm.
It's stories. And so I think that's a really natural part of human beings,
I
the
think you're right.
storytelling.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, but it's a lot more sophisticated. Yeah. Like I said, I had 200 pages, nothing. It wasn't even, it was mush, you
Oh,
know.
but it's your learning process.
It was.
Your
It
your
was.
first book isn't supposed to be perfect.
Well, I think when you read books, and this is something that I've heard from several sources, and she says it too. She puts it this way. She said, you really need to read to become a writer.
Yeah.
And she said, people who say, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to copy somebody else's are being silly because you learn how the trade is done. You learn how
Exactly.
the techniques for openings and closings and building tension and pacing and all this other stuff by reading,
Right.
by
Yes.
experiencing
Yes,
that.
yes,
And
exactly.
and so that's really common piece of advice that like really successful writers will tell
Right,
you.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it's to read. Right?
I most definitely do that. A little obsessively.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have to say I like to read books, but I have to get a book I really like.
Oh,
And
I see.
that's something we can talk about sometime is how do you pick your books? How do you find the authors that you like?
Isn't
And
that funny?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost by accident sometimes.
It is, yes.
Um,
The thing that I found interesting about this whole thing is we've got a lawyer, we've got a geneticist.
Yeah.
You were an accountant?
Yes, I was. I was a creative accountant.
A creative accountant, yes. Yeah.
In a
Not
good way.
creative.
In a good way, not with the numbers.
Also a politician.
Oh,
So yeah, I know,
to
I
live
know.
that down. There's a lot of stories there, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I did write Politics and
Yeah,
Poltergeist.
yeah.
Politics and Poltergeist is a spoof on politicians.
Yeah.
It's local state politics.
Right.
But nonetheless, it is a way to look at these human beings. I mean, politicians are just, as human as you are, but
Sometimes.
but they might get larger heads than some people. But I was telling my son the other day because he was feeling a little disillusioned. And I think we
Okay.
do sort of feel a
Yeah.
little bit disillusioned. And I said, I served in a very large body. There were 400 members in the House and 24 in the Senate. And the vast majority, I want to say 90% or more,
Okay.
were very sincere. They were
Okay.
there because they wanted to serve.
Right.
There's always a few who have an agenda or are looking for a job or who knows
Right.
what.
Yeah.
But you don't just get, at least not in the role I was in, you don't just get rich because you're a politician. Maybe
Right.
that's different in Washington.
I
I
would
can't
think
tell you
so,
about
yeah.
that because that one is a little. I was in New Hampshire where you get to meet all the people, at least you used to, because of the First in the Nation primary.
Right, right.
So I'm going to stop with that because we've had enough politics.
Enough politics.
For
Yes, yes.
a lifetime recently. So I'll leave it there. But
Well,
anyway,
the thing that I found so amusing though is we've got all these professionals, and then there's me. I was an artist.
well, it's a combination of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually had a business at one time, which was crafts,
Yes.
handmade crafts.
Exactly.
That's art that I had to do.
Exactly.
And I loved it. I loved
Yeah.
the art.
Your stuff is very cool too.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love that. Yeah.
Thank you. I will say I have friends who are writers.
Mhm.
One of my friends who won a national book award, is an engineer.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and he went through, I've known him for many years. He went through the same process where he wrote this and didn't really see it working. And then he started studying and reading about plotting and pacing and themes and all this other stuff.
Okay.
There's so many good pieces of advice.
Right.
You have to assimilate what works for you.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. But he literally not only does he outline, he's got this line with here's where this peak is and here's where this is and this is where this is. And it's an amazing
thing. I
It
think
is.
it's gotta be. Yeah.
You could do it mathematically, I think.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
some math in there.
It's really whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And I love that about writing.
Yeah, me too.
Hey. Well, it's been lovely chatting about writers
Thank
and
you.
about processes.
And we have lots more topics to talk about.
Oh my, yes, most
Yeah.
definitely.
And wonderful, wonderful authors to share their flow,
Heck yes, yes.
their process.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will see you next week, and
Susan
will be back. Yes.
And everyone have fun writing.
Yes, please.
Can we kind of look to see how it